Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with.
Nerdarchy Ted.
And today we do a character build where this character is full of rage and tranquility.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Barbarian Monk, have you lost your mind, Ted?
It's crazy, I know, but there's a number of things that I think work really well with this particular thing, and conceptually, looking at it, it's like, all right, the Barbarian likes to get their hands on things. They want to break stuff. Problem is, you punch for 1 damage, and if you use one of the very few feats that you get in the game, you can up that to a D4. That's just not enough, in my opinion. I want to rage and I want to punch stuff.
Well, that being said, maybe we'll revisit that. But there's a couple things. One, there's a lot of overlap, right? They need a lot of that combination needs a lot of stats, and I see them as being diametrically opposed, from philosophy, right? A monk to me speaks of peace, calm, and order. A barbarian is like passion and rage and this chaotic nature. So they seem very diametrically opposed to me.
But what if you could find a way to marry those two?
So that being said, you could literally do the monk that kind of channels his rage, into his fighting and stuff like that.
It's a focused rage.
You can I know certain people don't like when we do this, but when we kind of just ignore the classes as classes and just take them for their pieces. I see, and go. We're creating this bigger whole,
right?
Which that works as well. But there is so many things that are awesome about stacking these together.
So let's finish up the last of the cons. Thematically, you said that they're diametrically opposed. They require 4 of your 6 stats if you're going to play it to its utmost. So that's a problem. They both classes get the extra attack, and both classes have an unarmored defense bonus, which extra attack and unarmored defense, they don't stack with each other. It's built right in there. So anytime you're adding those things together, you can't just be like, oh, well, let's piece it all together and I get them all. No.
There's actually one other con, too. Okay. Individually, each of these classes rock. These are, when someone had a class, someone was playing a Barbarian in my game, and they're like, I want to dip into this. I'm like, why? You can do that, obviously. It's your character. I'm not going to tell you how to play your character. But Barbarian is one of the few classes where, from 1st to 20th level, there's a payoff for following this all the way to the end. Their capstone ability is probably the best one in the game.
That is true.
So that makes it a really tough choice. Now you're looking at a specific split here.
I'm looking at 11 monk and 9 barbarian. Specifically at 11th level monk, that's when they're going to go up to the D8, which essentially means you punch as hard as a longsword. That's pretty darn cool if you ask me. And then 9th level, what is that? Their brutal critical.
Yes.
Which if you're going to be monking it up with your number of attacks, that's just going to be awesome to be able to be layering in those extra crits.
Yeah. Also, as a 9th level, you're going to get 4 rages a day, right? You're probably not going to run out of rage. You got enough to go around. 9th level is actually the turning point where your rage damage goes up. For the first time, and you're only losing a point there, so that's not really that big a deal,
right?
And let's face it, 1 rage per combat is generally going to be enough, so that's not a problem. And unless you're doing an extensive dungeon crawl where you're constantly going from room to room, fight to fight, in our games you would never use 4 rages in a day. You'd have to add rage on rage to do that.
Right.
So right there, I think you're covered. You're going to get a lot of other cool things. You're going to get reckless attack, right? Which is always useful, getting advantage on all your attacks. Bad thing is they get advantage to hit you.
Right, and you're not gonna have the best armor class that's out there until you start finding those awesome magic items that the DM lets them out there.
Well, you could but if you do, you're probably not doing a lot of damage.
Right.
Because we haven't even fully fleshed that out. Like, how are you generating your armor class?
So you're either getting 10 plus Dex plus Wisdom mods, or 10 plus Dex plus Con. So what are you gonna look at? So you've got two stats that are gonna bump it. So I mean, even if you manage to get two of them, and the right two up to 20, that's still only a 20 armor class.
Or maybe 20 armor class. That's not bad, but or you can like flip the bird to both of them and be a lizard man, and use their natural armor, which you could then get like a 15,
Right.
17 with a shield.
Right.
And then that's before you start upping your abilities.
But if you're using a shield, then you're not attacking with your offhand.
Well, you don't have to when you flare your blows.
Oh, that's true.
As a monk, you don't have to anyway because you have martial arts. Like, you can always use your bonus action to just take another attack as a monk. So you're not really limited like that. Although, personally, I would find the fighting with a shield and punching with one hand weird if you're going that way. But as a monk, you could always just use a monk weapon in your hand, and eventually, can't you up the damage to whatever your martial arts damage is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not an issue either. It's going to get better. When you first start off, you want to use a weapon anyway, probably, because you're only doing a D4. Unless you're just like, I don't care, you're just going to own it. Like, I am just punching things. I don't care. I punch. It's what I do. But there's so many other cool things. One, like, you max the spell out, you're going to get a plus 30 to your movement.
That is right there. It's like, oh, you're literally moving twice as fast as everybody else, and that's before you start using your Kai points for dashing.
Right, and that's not picking a race that moves faster. That's not taking an ability feat. That's nothing. That's just, I move 60 feet unless I'm small. Then it's 50, or is it 55? I don't remember.
Depending upon which one.
So then there is you eventually you're going to get the ability to run on vertical and liquid surfaces. I completely forgot about that. That's so badass. I mean, and you should be able to as a monk anyway.
Yes, up the walls and across the water, no problems.
As we stated, you're going to get the extra attack. Cool. Flurry blows, you can jack it up to 4 attacks around. Not a bad deal, especially if you're using reckless attack and taking a lot of attacks.
That's going to be far more crits, applying to that brutal criticals.
Yes, yeah, well, possibility, sure. Well, the other thing too that we didn't touch on is, what totem would you go as a barbarian? Well, okay, which path, right? But then, like, if you pick the one path that's worth taking, it's what totem,
right?
And everyone likes to take bear because for the resistance, which would be cool, which is going to help you when you're reckless attacking and you take less damage. But that being said, there are definitely ones that increase your mobility. Or if you actually just take the mobility feat later on, there's another way to go, which means you could move around the battlefield and then just use the Miyagi defense. Best defense, no be there, right? And not even worry about it. You have so much movement, like they're not getting away from you.
Right.
And here's the thing, like if you go with like wolf and eagle totems instead, they're very thematic for, I think, this build. Especially eagle, when you're like bouncing off the walls, and literally at a certain point you can kind of fly, but you could totally like theme that like wire fu.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of being the barbarian totem thing.
And the great part about this particular build is you're literally going to maximize your use of actions in combat.
The actions,
because you've got your reaction that you can use to deflect missiles. You have got a plethora of choices for your bonus action. Whether it be flaring of blows, whether it be using patient defense, step of the wind. You can use your reaction eventually later to slow fall. Like the choices are just literally ridiculous.
Yeah, you literally start off as not start off, but you will literally have 3 different ways to use reactions. You have attacks of opportunity, you're going to have your deflect missiles, and you're going to have your slow fall. And let's face it, like that's the hardest action to use for some classes, well, a lot of classes really. But this one has got 3 different ways to use it. Your bonus action, you always have a way to use it. Some of them require Kai points, some of them don't. You can be super mobile if you want, or super tanky. So, like, we got all that covered. what race would you make this character?
Well, we talked a little bit off camera, and there's literally, a ton of different options because you have 4 stats that are necessary. So if you went with, human, because they're literally good at everything, you can put things where you want. You can get that bonus skill, get that bonus feat if you do the variant, or you just go with all of them where I get a +1 to everything, which for this, that
This
actually
character
might
might need that.
You might want that, but you could literally be like, all right, well, I'll bump my 15 and my 13 up so that I've got 4 evens across the board, and I'll start off with mobility. I mean, how crazy is that? With this particular build, you had mentioned lizard folk, so that you don't have to worry about the stats.
It's kind of
as
wisdom.
much. Con and wisdom is nice, but you've kind of got that split. You could go with any of your strength con splits.
Well, here's the problem. Like, you're not going to want to neglect either wisdom or con, though. And con is your hit points, and if you're a melee fighter,
You need that.
you're going to need them, right? Unless you're really good at the Miyagi defense.
So I was looking at Furbolg because we rarely, get into that, and that's strength and wisdom. And let's say that while the strength is not going to apply to your armor class, that is going to be your focus because that's where you're hitting, and you're going to want to hit hard. So
And you're going to hit often too. Like, it's also your bonus to hit.
that's true. But I don't want to leave off half orc because if you're already going with barbarian and going towards that brutal critical, having the half orc critical damage die that gets added in, as well as the ability to get back up essentially from that first time you get tanked in a battle, that's pretty nice too.
And you get another skill out of it too. Like,
Right.
I don't know how useful it'll be for you, but you have it, right? So that's not bad. And also strength and con. So
Right.
again, they're 2 stats that are important to you because this character needs strength, dex, con, and wisdom. That's it. And after that,
That's it,
you're
yeah.
set. So there's that. I would say honorable mention would be Hildwarf.
Well, that's definitely a good option.
That's con and wisdom, 2 of the stats you want.
Mhm.
And then, an extra hit point a level is going to add to your tankiness. Some extra weapon proficiencies, not so bad. I mean, they're not going to be monk weapons.
Right.
So not as great there. So there is definitely a lot of different races you could use to build this one. Warforged. Warforged wouldn't be a bad option. +1 to armor class, right? This is a blanket until we get a better version of Warforged anyway. Strength and con again, you're going to suffer from the fact that it only gets the +1s.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, like bumping a 13 to a 14 with this type of build, and the 15 to the 16, not really that bad.
Right, that's going to give you the 16 and 2 14s and then a 12. So if you put that 16 as your strength, that's still going to be like, okay, well, which armor class build are you gonna go with?
And it's like getting 2 stat points by having that +1 to armor class.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be helpful as well. So there is literally a handful of ways to build it racially. What kind of backgrounds would you look at for this guy?
That's a challenging point. I know you can't stand being a barbarian and being an outlander, so we need to take that off the table. So what is going to get someone towards this path? So I look at this person as seeing them as a monk first. So part of me is like, well, what if we went with something that was more a intellectual pursuit, so like sage or acolyte, and then something happened to the monastery that caused them to rage out, and now they're on this quest for vengeance where they're dealing with this diametric opposition in their head of I believe in peace and serenity, but sometimes I just get angry thinking about this thing here. So like that, I'd want to go more in that direction.
So like I feel like I would throw out Soldier because this is so unorthodox. Not a big fan of Outlander and Barbarian, like you said. It's like doubling up. For this one, I kind of feel Hermit.
Hermit could work as well. It was kind of going to be my number 3 because depending upon how you want to come to the I'm doing both of these things. It could be that they're burdened with something in their soul and they're trying to squash it out, and through their banishment, they were banished by their order to deal with this, and
But
until
what if it's the opposite, right? What if this guy's never angry, right? He's never ever angry, but then he summons and channels his rage into his combat. He's the so I picture like a hermit out in the wilderness or wilds on top of a mountain, whatever, who goes there to contemplate and develops this style of martial arts on his own. Like if you look at the way the original martial arts were formed, they did it by watching animals, right? And they did it so that the monasteries, the monks couldn't meditate very long. They weren't healthy enough. They didn't have enough constitution, so they introduced these exercises to kind of like facilitate that. Well, the same thing is he could have decided to study something in nature and has gone out what if his martial art is the four raging winds or something like that, or something, the raging waters, or something, like he develops it from studying something like that. That could even tie into the mystical secrets of the hermit, so all of those kind of work. Like anything can really work. But I think in this case I like hermit myself.
I do like hermit, and I do like that concept. The other thing that I would look at is whatever race that you decide to go on. Some races definitely lean towards other things. So once you pick your race, that could help you pick what background is gonna work well for you. So like if you went with a hill dwarf, you could totally go with like a guild artisan, and he was a smith for a while until he decided to turn towards this other thing. Just I think sometimes that becomes a stepping stone, and what you want to do with the character role playing wise. And
Yeah, I think for this one, the way you kind of build it out is like you think about his martial art. How does it work? You're like, maybe he's developed this fire form Tai Chi thing or whatever, and he's studied fire, and that's how he's come to his martial art. And from there you can kind of decide where it goes. But like I said, I think I like hermit. I like the sage, that could work, or acolyte, where like something happened and he left, or maybe he had a change of mind. Like maybe he's a schism unto himself, and like he's been called, like he has another calling,
right,
that he decides to answer, and so he goes away and develops his own form, is essentially trying to form his own tradition, and breaking from whatever he was a part of before. So that would be a way to go. So let's do it. Let's just give this guy. All right, let's decide. Let's pick a race and because we already have the class split, so we might as well give him a race.
All right, so we're gonna go with hermit. What race are you solid locked in on?
Let's see. I don't like Furbolg as much for some reason.
So my top three is hill dwarf, half orc, and lizard folk.
Let's go half orc.
Okay.
Like it makes for a strength based monk, and I kind of feel like the hermit part works really good. I feel like he's kind of left to contemplate things. He's probably got that conflicted the conflicted heritage, and there's a lot of things that really work mechanically well with the half orc,
right,
that are going to lend themselves. And having to mix monk and barbarian together, being dropped might come up.
So what do you guys think of this particular character build? Why don't you continue the conversation down in the comments below? While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy.